playing in master mode, and
I'm just gonna go straight on to mute, guys.
Okay.
Are you just not even going to be on the episode? Like, should we?
Yeah, I'd say just pretend like I'm not here. I gotta do some editing for Gary stuff. I gotta send some emails to some other companies to get free swag. So,
did we hear back about Don't Knock Twice?
We have not yet. No.
See, that's a game where I'm like, I want to play it, but I don't want to pay $12 for it, which is how much it is.
That's fair. We only have to pay half because we'll sponsor the other half.
Dude, did you forget the part where I've been unemployed for the last month?
That's a good point.
I barely am going to be able to convince my wife to let me get Mario next week.
All right.
So,
all right, jump into this episode, guys. Go.
All right. Let me know when we're good to go.
We're good to go.
In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Retro Rewind.
Hang on. I forgot to hit record. Okay, now for real this time. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Retro Rewind for Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. You're listening to a special Patreon-sponsored episode of Nintendo Dads. Zach, cue the music.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Retro Rewind, brought to you by Nintendo Dads over at patreon.com/Nintendo Dads. My name is Zach Erickson, and tonight is October 18th. Joining me for this deathly gothic experience is the man with the plan. I don't know where I'm going with this. Jesse Waldeck. What's going on, Jesse?
Neither do I. I have no plans.
Nope. That's okay.
I plan to buy Mario next week. That's my plan.
And what a good plan it is. Joining me as well from the land of the South, Marty Estes. What's going on, Marty?
You know what they don't have in the South?
Butt rock?
No, they have that. We call it Leonard Skinner.
Nice.
We don't have castles, and we don't have Vanias.
We actually have a castle here in Kansas City.
And you know what? Now that I say that, I take it back, because right in the middle of Tennessee, there's a guy who built a castle, and he hosts a Renaissance festival there.
Nice. Oh, dude,
he lives in it.
My wife and I got married in that castle about 2 miles away, like 9 years ago.
Huh. Oh gosh, dude, that's amazing.
Are there vampires there though?
Yeah, no. Dude. There must be. Come on.
It is vermin free.
Oh, hang on. My music video is buffering. Oops.
Well, that's probably a good cue to move on.
Yeah.
That's when you just talk about the game.
Stay classy, Zach.
That's amazing. It's literally just sitting here. I'm just going to show this to the video chat because, yep, it's loading. All right. Anyway.
We got in trouble for making fun of the butt rock. That's probably what it was.
That's probably the butt rock gods have said that they are displeased. So, anyways, so this of course is Retro Rewind, where we talk about retro games, old games, as the kids say. And this one's interesting. You know, this is an interesting game. I don't really know how else to put it. I suck at this game. So I think how we start every Retro Rewind is we talk about, you know, sort of our history with this game, and sort of how we were, what our state was leading into the game. So wow, I just got the hiccups. Marty, what about you? You are the one who was super excited about this game. You were like out there campaigning on Twitter, and I want to know from you what, how, like, tell me why this game is important. Because having played, I don't know if I'm going to say something a little controversial in a minute, but go ahead.
No, okay. So this game, I believe, is probably the most important retro Castlevania game, and that includes Symphony of the Night in that. When I say that, because Castlevania 3 was probably the game for me, and at least for the people that I knew, that saved the Castlevania franchise from certain death. And the reason for that was that Castlevania 2 was received so badly by so many people that I talked to, including myself. And I know now it's kind of like a cult classic, but even just with it going back to the original play mechanics of what makes Castlevania, or what made Castlevania good at that time, not the whole, day to night, going back and forth between certain areas and having to collect items and that type of thing, like with 2. But 3 actually, I think, brought people back to this. And you can, if you don't think I'm, or don't agree with me, fight me on Twitter. That's okay.
And then it saved the franchise, and then Konami still managed to kill it 20 years later.
Well, that's true. Yeah, they put a stake through its heart
because it's not unless they somehow turned it into a pachinko machine.
Yeah,
thank you, Konami.
That was their whole.
You do you.
Yeah. Where they made it very clear that they're more interested in profits than actual video games, which to each his own, I guess.
But of course, going back to the second Castlevania, sidelining it, that's kind of the pattern with a lot of NES franchises, both first party Nintendo and third party, is they made a game, people liked it, they decided to mix it up with a second game, people didn't like it so much, third game they go back to what people liked.
Well, Zelda did that too, right?
Zelda did it, Mario did it, Castlevania did it. Trying to think, it was probably 2 or 3 others. Well, even
Star Fox 2 was going to do it, but they didn't.
Fire Emblem did it. We just had a remake of the second game that had a different mechanic that didn't exist anywhere else because it was only in the second game.
Right.
And if you want to jump systems, Metroid did it too, with the whole hunting aspect of hunting down Metroids in Metroid 2 for Game Boy.
I'll buy that. Yeah.
Ah, true.
So, yeah.
Which again, just had a remake.
Right. So, I would love for this game
that means Zelda
get a remake.
Ready for a remake now.
You think
actually, I'm gonna go on the record here and say I actually wouldn't mind that.
I would embrace it. I think it would be weird. I think, you know what? So, do we want it? And we're already off the rails because this game
because of Zelda 2.
But do we want it to be full blown 2.5D side scrolling platformer, Zelda 2 style? Oh, guys.
You had me at platformer.
Oh, my gosh.
Speaking of platformers, let's talk about how hard this game is.
It's not CDI.
Zach, you just said a minute ago that you suck at this game.
I tried to play this game over the course of this month. I guess it's probably been, 5 weeks or so since we announced it. I've probably tried it I want to say 6 or 7 times to play this, and I get 4 minutes in and I'm dead.
Here's the thing. I remember being a lot better at this game.
I definitely was.
Because I beat it at one point as a kid.
I remember beating the game once, which unlocks the other characters, and then I remember playing it with Alucard.
You could get him before that.
So here's
Probably again. I didn't get that far the second time, but this time. But I do remember playing it through as Alucard, and I know I had the sorceress available, but I don't think I liked playing as her.
So let's and you mentioning those characters brings up a good point. Probably a good time to talk about a little bit of history about this game, right? So in the first Castlevania, you play as Simon Belmont, right? In Castlevania 2, you play as
also Simon, I think.
Simon Belmont.
It's a direct sequel.
Yes, it is a direct sequel. In Castlevania 3, you play as
Trevor.
Why? Because it's a prequel to the original Castlevania.
I'm literally remembering this because of the animation from Netflix a few months ago, not because of the game. Because the game doesn't explain anything.
No, it doesn't.
Throws you in.
It doesn't. You're like the whip guy. As my son called him. You're the whip guy.
Manual to get the story, just like a lot of NES games, because the NES isn't a good storytelling platform, and that's fair.
Okay, I'm going to make a controversial statement real quick.
Okay.
Does anybody actually care about the Castlevania lore? Does anybody care about the story? Because every time I've gotten into this game is
I'm sure someone does, but I don't think any of us do.
there's like some background of like, here's the Alucard or whoever is going to the thing, and like there's all this backstory, and then bam, it's some dude in a castle fighting zombies and monsters and crap.
Here's the thing. I think if you ask people that question, then they're inevitably going to point forward to Symphony of the Night and how those games have been more, you know, when Castlevania became Metroid with vampires. Yeah, I said it. It sucks. Stop doing it. Let's dig a grave. I'm gonna have my Greg Miller moment here. Let's dig a grave. Let's throw all the Metroidvania, Castlevania games into them. Let's shovel dirt on top of it with used copies of Castlevania 4, and then go play them because they're the best Castlevania game that's ever been made.
Let's throw some ETs on top and throw it into the desert.
Well, yeah. While we're doing it, because we don't even want people to find any of those Metroidvania, Castlevania games. And yeah, so I just killed Retro Rewind. Sorry, guys.
Wow. Nice.
I have a very strong opinion about what makes a Castlevania game good. And I think it has a lot to do with Castlevania 2 and how awful that game is. And there's nothing you can do to convince me that that game's not awful. That's why Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 3 and 4 are good. Because you just hit the nail on the head, Zach. Nobody cares about the story.
Yeah. Why, like comparing, and of course, I mean, like everybody compares Metroid and Castlevania, but like comparatively, Metroid and oh geez, sorry, I'm in the middle of playing. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. Something terrible just happened. Okay, I'm gonna make that. I was in the middle of. I was saying that Breath of the Wild is there. I was trying to play Breath of the Wild and also record a podcast. A, doesn't work. B, a huge black troll just showed up on the freaking Zora bridge and I almost died. So anyways, I'm going to have to go back to that. I will turn that off. Having said rewind. Okay, so comparing the story in Castlevania to the story of Metroid, the story of Metroid has known what it is, right? Like, and like with this Castlevania series, I'll be honest, I didn't even get through it because I watched the first episode and it was boring. It was just like, okay, yeah, so this guy is
it does have a very slow start, and albeit because the whole, I said it before, that whole thing is a prequel. It's like a prologue to the real story will start in season 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but like Castlevania 3, is this the one that like it actually starts with like a text scroll? I'm trying to remember if I just started I got an SNES Classic and
no, when you start this game, when you start the game, it just like you start in some abandoned, dilapidated town, and Trevor is kneeling at an altar and lightning strikes it and he whips off his cape and then you walk to the right and whip zombies into submission. So okay, and literally in the first level, there's literally zombies.
Yeah. So like A, his name's Trevor. B, like it's just like it, right? His literally is like really like I always think of Iron Man 3 where the Mandarin's name is actually Trevor, and so that
he's just a guy playing a role.
Maybe that name's just soiled for me now, but anyways, so I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and crap on this game the whole time. So anyways, so what to you, Marty? What makes a good Castlevania game?
Well, there's a few things, and here's number one. It needs to be difficult. But not overly difficult. It needs to give you a fair amount of challenge to make you feel like you're actually doing something. And that was one of the things that that Castlevania games, especially Castlevania 1, 3, and 4, were good at. You felt like you were accomplishing something when you made it past a certain stage. The other thing is that yes, it's ultimately a tale about a Belmont defeating a vampire, but all three of those games did a great job of making you feel like you were playing like an A-list of monster mashup movie throwdown. You know what I mean? Especially Castlevania 4. Because if you get to the end of Castlevania 4, like the last couple of stages, it's almost like its own boss rush mode. And the way this works, you know, in Castlevania 3 is the same. I mean, you're going to fight mummies and Medusas and skeletal knights, and you're eventually going to, you know, end up fighting Dracula himself. But the cool thing about Castlevania 3 is that you have the ability to transform into 3 different characters that actually completely change the way you play the game. So Trevor is the guy with the whip, right? You know, that you start out with.
Yep.
You can actually find these other characters in the game by taking different routes. And this was what was so cool to me as a you know, a young gamer, was that there's this game on the Nintendo that has a choose your own path through 16 stages, right? Okay, so like you beat the first stage and then you go to this map that shows, you know, the area of Castlevania 3. On it looks this old faded map, and then
I did get this far.
down at the bottom of the screen, you will move your character and they'll either climb the stairs or go down the stairs, and it picks a different one. Now, the important thing to remember here with this is that if you go into the second area, like there's one way that is like the I guess the main way to go, you know, no branches. If you always go up, but the second stage is optional so that you can get one of these 3 partner characters.
Yeah. I ended up getting the first one when I played, and then I was kind of a little bit upset when I found I had to backtrack and reverse my way through that level to get back to the main path again.
Yeah. And like, just
what?
to kind of,
I forgot all about that.
Bring all that together and talk about what we're meaning is, this is from the game's Wikipedia page. It says, there are 2 main routes through the game's 16 stages. The second stage is an optional excursion for picking up one of 3 partner characters, and the main branch occurs partway through the third stage. Each route contains a total of 9 stages, 10 if the player takes an optional second stage. The upper route takes the player across the lake to the main bridge, entering Dracula's castle through the front gate, and is generally regarded as the easiest route. The lower route takes the player through a series of underground tunnels and cavernous areas, eventually scaling the cliffside below the castle, and is generally considered more difficult than the upper route. And then the lower route also features a branch, and the 2 paths converge at the main hall of the castle. And through that, you're able to get either Sypha Belnades or Belnades, however you want to pronounce it, I don't know, a sorceress who has like really crappy attack power, like she has a stick, but she has she has elemental magic spells that you can use that use up your hearts, of course. But I think it's like fire, ice, and lightning. Am I right there? Maybe, I don't know. Somebody correct me. Then there's a second one who is Grant Dynasty, who is a pirate, who is like a thief.
That was my wrestling name in high school. Was
Grant Dynasty.
Grant Dynasty.
I think he's the guy.
See, I've also heard it. I've also seen it printed as Dynasty. So I don't know. A pirate.
Preferred Dynasty. Yeah.
Grant Dynasty, because he's a pirate, right? And he can climb on walls. And like, here's the big thing about Grant is he can actually change his direction in mid jump, which, as you know, is not a thing that they let you do in Castlevania at all. When you jump, you've committed to that direction. You're going left or right, no matter what. And then there's Alucard, who Jesse has already referred to, who is Dracula's son, which is actually also Dracula backwards. But here's the cool thing. The cool thing about Alucard is this: is that he can turn into a bat and fly around the screen.
So are you saying, were you going to say you should have named your kid Kaz?
Yeah, I did.
Yes. That's
I should have.
And here's the thing. You can only have one of those guys at a time. So if you find a new one, you have to abandon your old partner. And pressing the select button will let you transform between the 2 at will. So it's kind of like you
figured that part out.
You have a like a Donkey Kong Country type thing going on there, right? Nice. But the problem with it is this: they have the same health meter. So if you ever transform into like Alucard and take a bunch of damage, you're like, oh, transform back to Trevor Belmont and be fine. No, you're still gonna die. And the ending of the game will differ based off of who you pick too. Like you were asking what makes a good game. Castlevania used to be like it kind of like was about exploration plus the action, I guess. Like in the original Castlevania, one of the first things that you find is, and I don't know, have you played the original Castlevania?
Somewhat,
Okay, so
anything else?
like what blew my mind as a kid with the original Castlevania was that one of the first things that you do if you're just messing around is that you break open a wall and find some meat. Like
wall
in the
chicken.
like in the first like little bit of the castle.
Mhm.
And that immediately opens your mind up to the possibility of there are tons of stuff hidden in this castle. Right? And so you start whipping every wall, and there's parts in the original Castlevania that if you crouch down in a certain place for a certain time, this flashing item will open up, will come up out of the floor, and you'll go pick it up, and it'll give you 5,000 points or 10,000 points. So there's this element of exploration that's always come out through the Castlevania series. 3 continued that with the branching paths. 4 continued that with just some really huge levels that sometimes have different ways to go. So I think that comes along with it, and I know that kind of flies in the face of what I was originally saying about the Metroidvania thing, but I've always seen it too as though you have these branching paths. Castlevania always, like before Symphony of the Night, had a point A and a point B. You're going from the beginning of the stage to the end of the stage. You're going to whip a lot of monsters. At the end, you're going to fight a really super cool boss. And I think that you kind of lost that some after the Super Nintendo era. And like this is a pretty late in the game. This is a pretty late in the game entry for the Nintendo. I didn't realize it came out in 1990 in North America. I would be getting my Super Nintendo about a year later. So it's probably one of the last games that I played on my Nintendo pretty regularly. But it just has it all. And also, I'll say this too. One of the draws for Castlevania games, period, was those games always had one of the best soundtracks for games.
Mm-hmm.
And in an era where it was mostly 8-bit chiptune stuff, it still managed to have just like really catchy music that would stick with you way past when you turn the game off.
Yeah, Konami.
It was instantly recognizable.
Konami and Capcom, I think, were the 2 best companies for that.
Absolutely. And so, for me as a kid, like I didn't, I'm going to tell on myself a little bit. I didn't like scary movies because I got scared easy, but I could play Castlevania. And that kind of made me feel good. I don't know. Maybe it was the whole, like, you're actually killing the monsters or whatever.
Well, there's a certain element of like control and mastery and all that, right? Yeah.
Right. And going back and playing this, and Zach, you saying that you found out how not good at this you were, like going back and playing it for me even too. I mean, I struggled with it going back and playing it. But the muscle memory came back. It's like, oh, I got to stop here, and then I gotta move forward right now, or I don't jump on this. Just reminded me of how much skill went into playing games on the Nintendo, on the NES.
Well, just in general, right? Like games back in the day were hard. Like they
did not hold your hand.
Yeah.
And I think, do you think that they were harder then because of the fact that the industry didn't have the tools to do a tutorial or didn't have the way to hold your hand? Or is it because the games were generally about, an hour long, and so they made them harder so they'd last longer?
Well, I think just in that era, the games that they were used to making are arcade games, where they make them hard intentionally so you drop more quarters.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of mentality kind of kept on going into the early to mid 90s before developers finally realized we don't have to do it this way anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely my impression too, Jesse. Where it's like, where like Pac-Man had what, like 4 levels or something, or I guess Donkey Kong only had 4 traditionally, right?
Donkey Kong has 4 stages that loop.
Plus like the whole tutorials, like like the classic, Mario, the original Super Mario Brothers is the classic example of teaching you through level design, right? Where you literally, or like Metroid, right? Where like in Metroid you try and run right and can't go anywhere. Now it forces you to go left, right? And then it gives you the morph ball. And then now the only way to get through here is to get through and use the morph ball to get out, right? And so and every time they would give you something new, they would force you to use it and figure it out.
Like long jump boots or high jump boots.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing with Castlevania, though, on that end is there's literally nothing of that kind in those games.
Yeah.
It's like you either get past it or you don't.
Yeah, it's all just skill based instead of item based.
And I'm not afraid to admit this at all, that like as a kid, the farthest that I could get in the original Castlevania was to the end boss of, I think it was level 5, which is Frankenstein and Igor, who is this little like imp that jumps around, and you can't kill him at all.
I hate those things.
And you can kill the regular enemies, but this boss, you can't kill him. You can stun him, but you can't kill him. And Frankenstein, you have to hit in the head only.
Yeah.
And I finally managed to be able to make it past him like a month ago and made it all the way to Dracula. And I can get to Dracula has 2 forms, which I was not aware of. There's a original, like, just Dracula the vampire, and then he turns into this giant monster, and I just cannot do it. I have a save state on my NES Classic where I'm right there, and I just cannot. It just doesn't happen. It's not going to happen.
I don't remember ever beating the original, but I did beat the second one.
So here's my question, Marty. What is like you said that you had finished, or you were kind of looking up some stuff about Castlevania 3. What interesting tidbits can we give the listeners about Castlevania 3 as we're talking about this?
Well, one of the things that we want to talk about is, I think, that this is being continued. And I'm probably going to get this guy's name wrong, but Koji Igarashi, who has always worked on the Castlevania series, is continuing his work with Bloodstained eventually, I guess, when it finally comes out. But this is it inspired a lot of things, actually. 2005, there was another Castlevania game that came out featuring Trevor Belmont. It was a 3D game, and it was called Castlevania Curse of Darkness, and it actually came out for the Xbox and PlayStation 2. But Koji Igarashi cites this game as his favorite game in the series. And one of the reasons for that is he notes the music, that it is so well done.
It is really, really good music.
And he also says the setting as well. And there is actually, here's what I didn't know until I looked this up, that there is a special sound chip in the Japanese version of this game that makes it sound even better than the American version.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So the Japanese version contained a specialized coprocessor chip called the VRC6. And the game's, like the guy who did the music, the audio programmer, actually was one who helped make this chip. And what it did was it added 3 extra channels to the system's initial set of 5 sound channels. So he now had 8 channel sounds. So what happens is the majority of the music in the Japanese version of this game actually combines these channels to imitate a string section.
Wow. Okay, I found something here. I don't know if it's going to be any good.
Okay.
I found we're going to try it. This is the Japanese soundtrack. which is weird that the Japanese would. I mean, like you just explained why, but
Right.
there is a Japanese soundtrack to this game that is different. Sorry, continue before we.
So as you're finding that, the North American release replaced this chip with Nintendo's proprietary chip, the MMC5, and the problem with that is that chip's sound channels cannot be used with the NES, and so the game's music had to be downgraded. He actually had Yoshinori Sasaki actually had to downgrade this music to be compatible with the NES's 5 channels. And it was so popular that there was a soundtrack album released later on called Akumojo Dracula Famicom Best, which was, it included the Famicom version of the game's original music.
Does this sound different to you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that sounds way better, dude.
I'm going to need to do some work to my NES Classic.
Yeah.
Man, even that.
This is probably a continuation from like the original Castlevania was released on the Famicom disk system, and I think the disk system had an extra channel that didn't exist in the NES. So Konami has had practice.
Yeah,
playing with the multiple channels available.
There is no way that was sound chip. That was great.
But that's not all of the differences. There was actually a ton of differences in this game between the North American and the Japanese version. There were changes in gameplay. In the Japanese version, Grant stabs his enemies with a dagger. In the American version, he throws daggers.
Yeah,
as his main attack.
No stabby in America.
Yeah, some enemies do less damage in the Japanese version, or had their sprites changed for the Western release. There was also, of course, and we know Nintendo's policy on this, nudity was edited for the American audience as well, and the Japanese version had different backgrounds for stages and had special effects not seen in North American and European releases in those backgrounds. So I'm guessing things like, clouds and smoke and mist and different things. It's funny how those...
Yeah. Back then, too, anytime there was any sort of like a cross, like Earthbound is notorious for this. Like, I wonder if any of that stuff happened, too. Where it was like, religious imagery, can't have that. And then they just, like, censor the crap out of it.
Right. There's also, you're able at the beginning of the game to enter a name for your player. And if you enter, this is a little cheat, and you guys can use it. Maybe it will make a difference here. If you want to start the game with 10 lives, you can enter the name Help Me with a space between Help and Me. There was also hidden options to start with any of the 3 spirit partners and to access a second, more difficult quest. And those features are not present in the Japanese version.
Because they're like, man, these Americans, they suck at this game. Give them a little... That's so funny. Oh, right on. Well, very cool, man. Well, that is...
Before
sorry.
we wrap things up, Marty, maybe you can help me with where I got stuck. I got to one of the bosses. He was a big hulking guy with a shield that... No matter what I hit him with or threw it at him, I wasn't doing any damage. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, now I'm going to go look it up. But I think
it might be the boss that would have unlocked the sorceress.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you're talking about I believe that is the Skull Knight King.
If I choose the other branching path, I end up with like a bat that when I hit it splits until it finally goes away, and I couldn't beat him either. But the guy with the shield, I couldn't even touch him. So,
okay. Is it one that every time you hit him, a bone breaks off?
I don't recall a bone breaking off.
Wow. Okay.
It would have been maybe the fourth stage.
I see Evil Flame. Wow. Maybe.
Doesn't ring a bell to you?
No. I'm actually going to have to go. I was looking it up on a wiki, and I was hoping that it had pictures of the bosses. I know you have to fight Alucard at one point, and you have to fight doppelganger of your.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Whoever you want. Let's see. No, okay. I've got pictures here. Is it like it has a horn, like a head with horns on it, and it has a sword, or is it the Cyclops?
I don't know.
All right. I'm gonna have to
I'm
call.
I'm not seeing another boss with a shield.
All right, we'll talk about it after the show.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good luck with we could call the Nintendo Power Line. What was that called?
The Nintendo Power Line. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is Castlevania 3, of course. And just before we wrap up, just a reminder: next month we are talking about Metroid Prime. So you can get that on the Wii U eShop. You can get the Metroid Prime trilogy for $20. And so we're going to be playing the original, the first in that series, Metroid Prime. So play along. We're going to record that episode in about a month's time. And we want to talk a little bit at the end of this show as well about changes to Retro Rewind that are coming. So, Marty, why don't you set this up a little bit as far as why, we are going to be making changes. Why change, Marty? People hate change.
People do hate change, but we feel like this change is going to be a change for the better. And for one of the biggest reasons that we do need to make some changes to Retro Rewind is because let's just address the elephant in the room. We expected to be able to have a virtual console on the Switch by now.
Yep.
And because of the delay in that, and because of different things, Justin has a Wii U that's in storage in Lethbridge, and I don't have access to my Wii U. And just to be honest, sometimes we have it's gotten to a point as the cast of Nintendo dads that we just have too much to play. Yeah. And so we're making some decisions, and
I'm also going to put out there that maybe this is not even the okay thing to say, but some people it almost feels like people are selecting games that they don't actually want to play along with. And so we're hopefully going to pick some games here. Sorry, continue.
Right.
I just feel like sometimes nobody actually wanted to play this game along with us. They just wanted to put us through it. I'm sure that's not actually the case.
No, I don't think that's actually the case. And we know that you guys love us, and we want to the main reason that we want to make this change is because we want Retro Rewind to be something that is ultimately something worth you being a patron of the show for, worth you taking your time to listen to. And that includes just, we've had this formula for a certain period of time with the show, and for shows to grow and to get better, sometimes we have to change, we have to prune away, or we have to go in a different direction. And so, Zach, why don't you kind of talk about where we're going with that?
Yeah, so basically what we're going to be doing moving forward is, and how it's worked so far right now, is that patrons were able to suggest games on the Patreon page, and then we would open up a poll based on those, and we would let patrons vote on which game was selected. And basically what has happened because of that too, I guess another thing is that we've covered 2 Castlevania games, but we ended up covering kind of the weird ones almost, not, and what we want to be able to do is to be able to specifically select games that are going to be interesting to talk about from every angle, from a historical perspective, from, hopefully games that are going to hold up, that are going to be enjoyable to play now, things like that, so that we can really get as much excitement and engagement around this as possible. And so what we're going to be doing, at least after Metroid Prime, probably a couple of weeks before that episode is recorded, we're going to put up a poll where that nomination stage of Retro Rewind, we are going to take care of that for you, basically. So instead, patrons we will select 2 or 3 are we actually going to just do like Splatfest style too?
I think what we've settled on is exactly what you just said, a Splatfest style 2-game 1 versus 1.
Yeah.
You vote for the one that you would rather play along with us. And this will allow us kind of become a little more laser focused in what we do. And it may even allow us to do things like, oh, it's October, let's highlight this scary game. Or, it's summer, let's highlight the perfect summer retro game, or different things like that. And so we just think that by narrowing down the choices, but also making the choices something we bring to you, that will allow us as hosts, that will allow us as showrunners, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, to kind of get together and say, hey, do we all have this game? Or do we all have access to this game? Because what it seems like we're running into now more and more and not because of us or because of any of you, but because of Nintendo. I'm going to throw them under the bus a little bit because of their delay in Virtual Console. Our options are shrinking.
Yeah. And so basically
for what we can all play together.
Yes, and having being that the SNES Classic has just come out, that is now fair game, as well, and so as well as the NES Classic. I think there were a couple of things on there that were not fair game before, so we're just gonna get as many people as possible. So anticipate that this upcoming one after Metroid Prime, there you will have 2 games to choose from that are specifically from the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. So that is something that we're going to select some games from there, so that we're really excited about it. Okay, and if anybody has any questions or concerns or suggestions as we kind of roll that out, of course, this is this is for the patrons, and so if you have any concerns about this, any questions, we're totally open to the dialogue. If there is a resounding "I hate this," go back to the way things were, we'll go back to, like, if there's that much resistance to it, then that is a conversation that we can have as well. So I personally feel like that this will again provide us with an opportunity to have a certain level of, I'll use the words, creative control, while still providing some choice for the patrons as well. So does that make sense, guys? Anything you want to add to that, or?
I think you said it well.
All right, perfect. Great. Well, with that, I'm gonna bring up this music here. There we go. We're gonna listen to the Japanese Castlevania stuff on the way out. All right. So that is for everybody another episode of Retro Rewind. Go and play Metroid Prime, everyone. We're going to be talking about that in 1 month's time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of your patronage. Of course, this is brought to you by patreon.com/NintendoDad. So if you're not a patron over there, you're missing out, because guess what? Patreon is the new place to be. There are new patrons every single week, and even $1 a month is going a long way in helping us bring you the best possible show on the internet. If you want to email us, nintendodads@gmail.com. And of course, if you want to change the world, head over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, share the Nintendo gospel with the world, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye. Oh no, I gotta find the thing. Wait, it's a different app because I was using YouTube. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Hang on. It's gonna be worth it, I promise.
Thank you for listening to Nintendo Dads.
There we go.
Wobble Puffet, Wobble Buffet.